Jess and Greg Stone are Go Ruffly. That's what they call themselves socially. It's also the name of their business. Go Ruffly manufactures dog accessories and a renowned motorcycle dog rack. Yep, for putting your dog on your bike. It's pretty slick. Jess and Greg are also motorcycle travelers, so they've sort of developed their lives so that they can travel on their motorcycles and run their business from the road. And over the past couple of years, they've been riding around the world with their dog, Moxie. Well, last year, their dog, Moxie, suddenly died from complications from a routine surgery. Heartbroken, but dog invested, they set out to find a new pup, train it to ride the motorcycle, and then continue on their journey. And they did that. They got a new pup. They named it Whimsy, trained it to ride on the back of the bike, and then once again, they're headed off to ride around the world. But according to Greg, Jess sort of enjoys setting challenges for them. That's over and above traveling by motorcycle around the world with a dog on the back. This time, the challenge was taking it up another notch. The Pan American Highway runs far north to the tip of North America, all the way down to the south of South America. It's a long network of roads that many people ride from top to bottom or bottom to top. Mainly, really, they ride it from top to bottom because that way you'll finish in a place that you can celebrate, because if you finish in the north, there's just a remote, desolate settlement that's dry. Not much to celebrate. Anyway, the only break in the route from going north to south in either direction is between Central America and South America. It's called the Darien Gap. Now, the Darien's roughly, this gap is, something like 100 kilometers, 60 miles, where there's no roads, no official route or trails, just wild jungle. Well, actually, not just jungle. There's wild animals like howler monkeys, venomous snakes, frogs, jaguars, even crocodiles. And there's some indigenous peoples that live there and have for who knows how long. And because the area is so dense and difficult to move around on, there's also criminals, drug dealers, human traffickers, and the like. So there's many reasons why you would not want to go into the Darien jungle. Now, it's not as if no one's ever done this or no one's ever gone there. There's been expeditions that have crossed the Darien by jeep, by motorcycle. We've actually featured some of the stories of people who've crossed by motorcycle, and their stories are incredible. There is, however, one route through the jungle that is walked every single day, at least now it is, by migrants, marching north, looking for a better life in a foreign country. But the route, the walk, it's no less dangerous. People die in this crossing every single year. In fact, just days before recording this episode, 10 migrants were killed in floodwaters trying to do this very trek. Jess and Greg have already rode to the top of North America, then all the way south to Central America. When they arrived in Panama at the infamous Darien Gap, since you can't ride a motorcycle through the Darien, unless you have a small army to help drag it through the jungle, they decided to fly their bikes over the Darien, but then, Jess's idea, to walk into the jungle and cross the Darien Gap on foot. Then, if all went well, they meet their bikes on the other side and continue their way down South America. That's all three of them, Jess, Greg, and Whimsy the dog, climbing and bashing their way through the jungle to cross the Darien Gap. So with all the dangers lurking in the Darien, the animals, the criminals, not to mention the incredible hardships of just traveling through the jungle, mountains, rivers, why would Jess and Greg ever consider crossing the Darien Gap by foot to continue their motorcycle journey on the other side? Well, I'm going to let them explain that to you coming up. I'm Jim Martin. This is Adventure Rider Radio. Stay with us. We got a good one for you.
Sam Manikin, Simon, Austin Vince, Simon Pavey, Helge Pedersen, Charlie Borman, Chris Birch,
Elizabeth Martin,
Jocelyn Snow,
Quentin Smote, and you're listening to Adventure Rider Radio.
Best Rest product is the maker of the Cycle Pump, the best tire inflator for motorcyclists. It'll inflate your flat tire in less than 3 minutes. Made in the USA, comes with a lifetime warranty. They also distribute Googletech filters, cyclepump.com. It's wind pressure that powers the Moto Breeze chain oiler. No electrical or vacuum connections. It delivers the oil to a felt pad on your swing arm. No nozzles near your sprockets. 1 ounce of oil gets 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers. Get more miles from your chain and sprockets. motobreeze.com. And Green Chili Adventure Gear offers American-made, heavy-duty luggage systems for all types of motorcycles. You can turn any dry bag into luggage using their strapping system. And of course, Green Chili Adventure Gear is tested in extreme weather and terrain to withstand the abuse that adventure riding gives it. Tough, reliable gear. greenchiliadv.com.
I'm Jess. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I am from Go Ruffly around the world.
And I'm Greg. I'm from LA and also the other half of Go Ruffly around the world.
Jess, Greg.
And that's Whimsy in the background, barking like crazy.
Welcome back to Adventure Rider Radio.
Thanks for having us. Sorry for Whimsy. She's seeing a cat.
You know, she doesn't sound like she's mic'd very well. Her bark sounds muffled. She sounds in the background.
She's in the background. Yes, she's in the backyard. Yes.
Right.
Unfortunately, that collar mounted lapel mic apparently that we got
It failed.
is no good.
Right. So where are you guys right now?
So we're coming to you from Huaraz, Peru, which is right there in kind of the high point of the Andes, of this stretch, like mid sort of central northern Peru.
Right. And anyone who's listening to this now knows that dog has something to do with this story. and that's why she's in the background. You guys are doing a round the world trip. Now, we talked earlier in your trip. I can't remember exactly where you were the last time we talked, but for those that don't know, so roughly, oh, get that, eh? Roughly,
oh, you did it right.
Perfect. It's like we set that up.
Exactly. What are you guys doing right now?
So we are currently on an around the world motorcycle trip. I ride with Whimsy on the back of my bike in her canine moto cockpit. And so we have been on the road now this adventure started 2 years ago. But we started with another dog, Moxie, which was our first German Shepherd, and she passed away just last year. And now we started with Whimsy again, and we started with her in July. So we've been going on for for about a year now with Whimsy. And we started in Guatemala. We went up to the Arctic Ocean, and now we're on our way down south to past Patagonia. And then we will go to Europe, Africa, and Asia.
Last time we talked, it was not long, I think, after Moxie had passed, and you were getting the new pup. And so you've got a new pup. You've trained the dog to ride on the back of the motorcycle, because you guys make these carriers. For those who don't know, you guys manufacture carriers, which you sell to other people we've had on the show, actually, that have bought them. So where the dog...
Yeah, we loved hearing Tracy recently getting around there with Rue.
Yeah. So you had to train this new dog and do all of this to get it on the bike for this adventure. That must have been quite the ordeal.
Not at all. Not even remotely. and truthfully, we did part of what we kind of designed into the Canine Moto cockpit is that we didn't want one of these like circus acts where the dog is like resting its paws on your shoulders or somehow it balances on the tank. There used to be this guy that rode a Harley in LA, and he had a big German Shepherd that rested on the tank. I think the German Shepherd's name was Harley.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And you'd see it and you'd be like, that's cool, but that's not ever a thing I'm going to do. That's, takes an enormous amount of training. So we were very focused on that. This should be something that any rider and any dog can do. And most of our cockpit riders report back that like they go for a ride their first day, like after, a couple of hours of training.
The sitting on the tank thing, the dog sitting on the tank, that's something that was popular in Australia, not as a fashion, but for farms, right? They'd get on the motorcycle and put the dog on. Apparently it's illegal now, I think,
yes,
to do that because it was so dangerous for them. Obviously, there's not much there for them. The tank is sloped down. The paws are supporting on the tank, and it'd be pretty easy for them to fall off.
Sure. And you come across that still a fair amount in Latin America. I think there's a big difference between riding around, your farm and rural areas and going through the middle of the city or
riding around the world.
Or riding around the world with your dog on the tank. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would anyone want to ride around the world with a dog anyway?
No,
hang on.
Well,
hang on. Let me just say that because I know you had Moxie and I know the story of Moxie on the back, but Moxie passed away and you had the opportunity to just go and become just two riders on two motorcycles and explore the world, but you didn't. You went and got a dog to take with you on purpose. So that sort of says something about this isn't just because it's your pet.
Yeah, no, it's a lifestyle. It's the way that we live extraordinary together. This is what makes us happy. Having a dog, having our pack, the two of us and our dog together. There's just something special about traveling with a dog. She just opens up a whole new set of experiences and adventures that we wouldn't have done if it was just the two of us. Like, for example, like where we stop for rest breaks. Like if it was just Greg and I, sure, we could go to a gas station, fill up, have a little snack and then go on. But because we've got Whimsy and when we had Moxie, like we need to stop in a grassy area that's good for them, that they can get down, they can run around, we can play fetch, and it just makes us sort of step outside of what we're used to, and it gets us to go to more natural and interesting places that both Greg and I enjoy.
It's all about the dog, though, at that point, isn't it?
Well, our whole life is about the dog. We've got a dog business, Ruffly, creates ethical outdoor dog gear, collars, leashes, beds, bandanas by Indigenous Guatemalan women. And then we do the Canine Moto Cockpit, so we get people riding with their dogs. So everything that we do is about the dog.
Well,
Right.
I would add two things that are not about the dog, but that the dog brings to the table. Okay. Because I'm kind of notorious, at least just in our little pack here, of, complaining all the time that Moxie first and Whimsy now doesn't do any work. Okay. Moxie was a working line shepherd and she was a great guard dog, but pitching the tent, setting up the cooking, the only thing we can get these dogs to do is to clean the dishes.
Yep.
That's the only
With
job
their
they
tongue.
do. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And it still needs to be cleaned after that.
Yes.
But there's two things that a dog brings to it that are just, you can't get another way. One is the absolute like first time, every time joy when they leap down from their cockpit in wherever you are, good, bad, or ugly. And it's just like they're thrilled to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's infectious, right? So, even having your adventure of a lifetime, it's day in, day out. People have talked about routines and the dog doesn't understand routine. It's just, wow, look where we are. And it livens everywhere you go.
Well, I was watching some of your videos. One thing I did notice, and I was thinking, well, maybe this is the whole thing behind this travel with the dog thing. When you guys come up to any sort of official, like a roadblock or a border crossing, maybe it's not every time, but a lot of times I saw like people are smiling at you as you come up and they're reaching out for the dog and they're wanting to get their cameras out and they want to get a picture of the dog. And then sometimes you guys are getting pictures of them with the dog and I'm thinking, what a great ruse for getting through a border crossing.
Yeah, it's all a shtick, we hand the dog back after we get through the border crossing. And,
Right.
But you point out the other kind of the other thing that the dog contributes, and that is the kinds of interactions and connections with people that, number one, if you're traveling as a pair or a group, you're maybe less likely to have. People are less likely to engage with you. It puts a lot more on you to be the kind of extroverted or outgoing version to initiate those interactions. When you have a dog, you have to kind of fend people off with a stick, in the best possible way that
Mm-hmm.
they want to ask, they want to talk. So as introverts, it's phenomenal because we've had just incredible experiences that we don't have to work very hard to initiate.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like taking the puppy into town sort of thing. Everybody will stop and ask you questions and want to pet the dog. It's that sort of
Yes.
thing.
Well, Jim, I'm sure it's like when you were single way back in the day and you'd take the dog to the park, right? And then,
When all the women
and then
would
young
come.
women would walk by.
I
and
never
then,
did that. I didn't go to the park. Yeah, definitely.
proverbially speaking.
Good icebreakers for sure. Hey, the round the world trip though has another component to it. Another reason you're doing it. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So it is a $100,000 fundraiser for the nonprofit Girl Up. So I connected with Girl Up before we decided on this trip even. It was a nonprofit that I had sort of been in touch with and thinking about and wanting to do something more for. And so when we decided on the trip, I asked them if this is something that they'd like to partner with, and they said yes. And so Girl Up is they were founded by the United Nations Foundation, and they provide leadership and development training for girls all around the world. So they're in, I think, 130 countries right now. And so they have these Girl Up clubs in these different countries, and they give them the resources they need to teach them to advocate for issues that matter to them. So if it's they want more women in government, or if they want to deal with like period issues in India, all the things that matter to them, they're learning how to fight for it and get what they need. And I think that's it was really important to me, because I felt like if I had a group like that growing up, I would be a lot further along in my own life, in my own personal and professional development. And I just see these girls when we go and meet them, and they are just ball busters. They're so strong. These they have opinions, and they know what they want, and they're fighting for it. It is just really inspiring for me. And I just hope that the little bit of riding around with a big dog on the back could be inspiring for them as well.
Wow. And you've already, I saw the thing, it says 20%. You've raised 20%. So like
Yes.
20 grand already?
Yep. 20,000 we've reached so far. Yeah. And it's been great. People have
Incredibly generous people.
have donated just after we speak to them, somebody who comes up and wants to see the dog, we tell them what they're doing, and they just give us some cash to add on into the fundraiser. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Now, I want to point out this cash you're raising is not paying for you guys to ride around the world. You're paying for that yourself.
We are paying that ourselves. Yeah. All the money that goes to the fundraiser is directly to the fundraiser. If you're in the US, it's tax deductible. Our adventure is funded
Our
by us.
sustainability plan. Yeah. We've kind of hit on something that's been, working now for going on 3 years that we actually love, which is kind of our 4-3 segment approach, because everything's got to have names and terms and definitions. But basically, on an average week, we'll ride 4 days and then work 3 days at an Airbnb.
Oh, I see. Right. And then you're paying for the Airbnb only for 3 days. You're camping, I assume, the rest?
Yeah, exactly right. And it's wonderful because those 4 days, I mean, you go in and as deep and as hard as that all sounds bad, but you travel as you just get out there and enjoy it. And then, 4 days later, you've got somewhere to land. And so it avoids kind of a burnout over time, right? Mm-hmm. That you're always looking forward to traveling. You're then looking forward to kind of being in the office, and then you're looking forward to traveling again. And so it's just constantly renewing itself.
How much prep work did it take to do this working on the road thing? Because it seems to me like it'd be very difficult. You're only getting 3 days out of the week. You're at a remote place. You've only got what you're carrying with you.
Yeah, so we practiced this a little bit before we left Guatemala for this adventure. We've got a team in Guatemala. We've got a manager, Graciela, who is fantastic, and she manages all the operations on the ground for the Ruffly gear and for the K9 Moto cockpit. So she is the one who was managing everything. So she deals with everything while we're gone for those 4 days on the road. And then the 3 days that we're stopped, we're able to communicate with her, catch up, make sure that everything is going smoothly, and provide that oversight. So we did a few week and month-long trips before we left to test it out to see if we had the right infrastructure in place for our team to enable this to work. And we found that it did. And that's why we settled on this 4-3 sort of segments.
So on this round the world trip, there's the three of you on two. Well, let me ask you about the bikes first. You guys are riding some pretty fancy bikes.
We are. So we're like going on 3 years now. We should be a lot further along, but as we'd mentioned before, Moxie passed away. she went in for a routine knee surgery from running in the sand in Baja because it was a fairly technical stretch, and that's what you do. You let the dog down, and Jess was riding it out, and Moxie
she tore her ACL basically.
Yeah. Now, what was it? A few weeks after that, as she was getting ready to go into surgery, I got absolutely clobbered by a chicken bus on the Pan American Highway in Guatemala, about an hour from where we were living before this trip.
Right.
And so my bike was not totaled. That's not fair to say. But it was going to be more expensive than it was worth, you know, for a 100 and some thousand.
Yeah, it was a 2013
bike.
BMW F700 GS.
So that kind of initiated like a search, and so while I had my hand, my like bird wing was kind of in a sling and had pins sticking out of it and everything. Jess was enjoying the process of us going to the different dealerships and visiting, and just kind of feeling out bikes because it had been so far out of the range of possibility, right?
Yeah.
So you were actually thinking of buying a brand new bike, you mean?
Well, I don't think anybody who's kind of got a small business and trying to ride around, I don't think I mean that at all.
Right.
But we wanted to, what do you do while I'm healing? And we're kind of, we're heartbroken from Moxie, and you're just, you're running the business. You're not traveling at that moment, and trying to kind of
Greg needed another bike. There was no way we were going to try and repair that one. So he would have needed something. And I still had my G650 GS. And we did want to have like the same brand of bikes just to make it a little bit easier as we were traveling for parts and things like that. So I was looking around and seeing what was out there.
Well, and she threw her leg over pretty much all the bikes there and just absolutely fell in love with the Tiger.
Yeah, the Triumph
she's
Tiger.
Like, this is just so refined and so gorgeous.
Well, it was such a step up from my 650. This was it was a 2023 Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro. And
Jessica is very keen on making sure everybody knows that it's a Rally Pro. She always lets say 900 Rally Pro.
It's got like all of the cool bells and whistles that I liked about it. So it's got like the heated seat. It's got all the different riding modes in it. It's wonderful, and it was just so comfortable when I sat on it. And I do have to say, when I told Greg, he came after and he sat on it. And poor Greg. So Greg is 2 inches, like two inches shorter than I am, and so it was a struggle for him because it's a tall bike.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm 5'9", Greg's like 5'7". Yes, I know, Greg. I know.
You had to put numbers to it, didn't you? Huh?
Anybody who watches our things can see it.
Yeah.
But I could see that it was like Greg was still recovering from his hand and everything.
Oh, I was just so diminished, mentally, physically. I mean, right. And it's like, you want to go bigger, and of course, I think the trend these days, after there was that kind of long way round period of, wow, I'm on 1150s, 1200s. Yeah. Oh, wow. And then there's kind of been this maybe thing in the last 5-10 years of like downsizing a little bit. Is that fair to say that a lot of riders are kind of
looking for a lighter bike?
We were thinking, lighter bike, smaller bike, you can go, easier. And we were thinking in that same direction. And then Jess is like, no, I want to go bigger.
But the thing is, though, like you said, you wanted the same bikes. These are expensive bikes. So you'd have to buy two brand new bikes or semi-used.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the price tag. I'm like, come on, we can't afford a new anything, let alone. But you I guess follow kind of what gets you excited. So she reached out to Triumph and said,
Triumph America.
Triumph America, and said, look, this, this is what I'm doing. And, this is what's happened recently. And we actually just asked for, loaners for the pilgrimage that we were doing after Moxie passed. We were visiting other people in the Western US who do different exciting activities with their dogs, dock diving, stand-up paddleboarding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, they actually, both of the marketing guys that we spoke to had dogs, knew about Ruffly and the cockpit, and had been looking at the cockpit
for their dog
as an option.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it was just dumb luck. Like they were, the team there is dog loving and were kind of like-minded. They loved the idea of kind of, the different approaches at adventure, and involving the dog certainly being one. And so they made it as an offer that we couldn't refuse. I mean, it was just so much. It was as good as anything else we could have found, and better, and fully equipped. So it was a no-brainer.
So what you're saying is you didn't get them quite for free, but you got a really good deal is what you're saying.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So Jess is now riding the, what was it again? A 900 Rally Pro.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, Jim. The 900 Rally Pro. It's a wonderful motorcycle.
What was the big deal? Like, what was the thing that you sat on this bike, you got all excited about it just in the showroom? Why? What was it about the 900?
I'm telling you, it was just so comfortable, and it was just such an upgrade from what I had. And to be honest, I haven't ridden very many different bikes. Like the 650, I stayed with that for a long time. And I sat on the Tenere, we tried the Touareg, we tried a whole bunch of different bikes. But then when I sat on this one, it was like, it just fit me, there was something about it that just clicked. And then
it made her feel like an absolute queen. I mean, this thing it's so detailed. It's so refined. Yeah,
it had everything that I was looking for. And the fact that it it looked nice, you have to love the way that
they look so angry.
Sure.
I love it. They look so mean.
No, they definitely are a good looking bike. And I saw the bike video and I noticed that even though you're riding the 900 Rally Pro, you don't hesitate to drop that in the dirt at all.
I know. I've had quite a few of those tip overs and drops in the dirt.
Yeah, that's been a kind of an incredible part of this, that although it is heavier than the bikes we had, it is so much more capable.
Yeah.
Our off-road ability,
I know.
our skills.
I've been able to ride roads that on my 650 I really struggled with, and it probably has to do with just being really dialed in on the Tiger and having the right modes and having the right suspension set up for my bike and the way that I'm riding it with Whimsy on the back. It just makes it a lot easier for me, and it's just you give power, it just writes itself in the way that my 650 just didn't, or maybe I just didn't have as the same amount of skill.
Well, look, I mean, the larger front wheel, the shocks. I mean, there's a lot to that.
But it's interesting because I still do get comments of it like, that's too big of a bike. Like, can you even lift that bike yourself? And I get a lot of that sort of. It's not necessarily. It is a bit of a male thing to sort of say to a female, like, can you really do this? Is it big? Is it? Can you handle it?
Yeah, this because they're questioning themselves. They're thinking, if I'm worried about it, how can she be riding this thing?
Yeah. She's got a big dog on there. She's not a big woman. And I get way more upset at those comments than Jess does. She just brushes them off. And I think, with my small man complex or whatever, I really identify. It's like, who are you to judge if she or I should be riding this bike?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sex has nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah. I can lift that bike. And if I go down in a really tough situation and Greg's not there, I'll have to unload it. Like Whimsy gets down, I'll take out the side cases. Like it's not too big of a deal. And the truth is there is always somebody who's coming by to help. Like all of these crashes that you might have seen, that these actually happened in Nicaragua, and they were on like really tough roads. And it was a pretty there weren't a lot of homesteads and houses.
We don't say middle of nowhere because it's actually the opposite. That's exactly where you want to be.
But there were always people who came out eventually to help us, either another rider that passed by or somebody from the homesteads that came out and heard the bike. But there's always somebody to help you wherever you are. And to be honest, like Greg is with me. So when I do have a really tough one, like we had a really tough one in the mud and we were able to lift that bike out.
Yeah, but really an indication of, I mean, a bigger bike, it is challenging to lift. It goes a little bit against the go lighter, at least, the kind of really reducing cc's, reducing weight. But we couldn't be happier. Mm-hmm. And there's one other thing that I think about a lot. I don't know about Jess, but that is worth considering if you're picking the bike for your trip or whatever. And that is, ideally, it's something that when you're at that campsite, when you're deep in the sticks and you look over, I mean, that you should look at it and you just are excited. You're just like, wow, I'm riding that beast to get here. There's a lot of I mean, you're doing this not, I think, as you've said many times, this isn't a practical thing. There's nothing practical about riding a bike around the world. It's uncomfortable. It's miserable. You're doing it because it's incredible. Mm-hmm. And whatever bike helps you feel that incredibleness is in that sense the right bike.
Now, to your point, I think that when you get off the bike, if it draws you in, your own bike, you ride it all the time, and it still draws you in to walk around and look at it, then you're on the right bike.
Yeah.
Absolutely so. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break while I tell you about a couple of things. When we come back, the rest of the story. Stay with us. Well, you want to plan something for August? This August 23rd through 25th, Overland Expo, Mountain West in Loveland, Colorado, at the Ranch Events Complex. They say it's the greatest collection of overland adventure companies in the world, with more than 300 gear vendors. So clearly you can outfit your motorcycle there. You can meet all these companies that are displayed there, which is pretty amazing in itself. But you can also get inspired by visiting the authors and filmmakers and creators and other travelers that are hosting workshops and classes and sharing stories from the road. There is so much going on there. It'll keep your head swirling for those 3 days. You got to get your tickets and camping passes. You can camp there as well. You can spend the whole weekend there in advance online at overlandexpo.com. So that's this August 23rd to 25th, The Ranch in Loveland, Colorado. Overlandexpo.com is the website. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. Overlandexpo.com. This motorcycle-specific item fits in your pocket, will keep you warm and comfortable, won't stink after you wear it too long, and could even save your life. Now, do you have any idea what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the Pearlie's Hugger by Pearlie's Possum Socks. It's a sweater that's actually knitted for us motorcyclists. But if you wear it otherwise, no one can actually tell that you're wearing a motorcycle garment. In fact, they'll likely say to you, as they do to me, that's a nice sweater, because it is. Now, Pearlie's has taken this winning formula of possum fur and merino wool and taken another step for the sweater. 20% New Zealand possum fur, 70% merino wool, and they've added 10% silk. And that blend is incredible because those natural fibers are not only super soft, but they have naturally impregnated lanolin in the fiber. Lanolin is what makes the fiber so resilient and resistant to growing bacteria, otherwise known as the stink that you'll find on synthetic materials after they've been damp for a short time, sweat, moisture. As well, those naturally grown hairs in those fabrics are super fine, but they trap air. And for us riders, that is so super important because that trapped air makes insulation. And those fibers are also designed by nature to wick moisture away from the skin, initially to keep the animal dry and warm, but in this case, it's the rider. There's nothing that's going to do what those natural fibers in Pearlie's Hugger sweater will do for you. So those fibers are everything. And I'll just talk about the knitting now. Now, Duke and Margot Lambert, they're the owners of Pearlie's Possum Socks. They're serious adventure riders, so they fully understand what it's like to ride in the cold or damp weather, even cool weather. They know what it's like to wear a heavy motorcycle jacket over an insulation layer. They understand that neck space is limited when you tighten your collar. They understand how high a collar should be. They know what it feels like to shove their hand inside a long, stiff motorcycle jacket sleeve. And because of that, they developed a knit just for us riders that fits perfectly, looks probably better than it should. You know, I was lucky enough to receive a prototype from Pearlie's before they went into production. And right out of the box, I thought it was just a home run. It fit great. It was incredible at modulating the temperature. And that's what really struck me, meaning that I could wear it in warmish to cold weather, and it always kept me comfortable. When I first started wearing that prototype, though, every time I hugged somebody to say goodbye, they would run their hands down my arms and comment how incredibly soft the sweater was. And it is. It's just unbelievably soft, hence the name, the Pearlie's Hugger. I didn't name it, but I told Duke the story. Anyway, they came up with the name, the Hugger. And oh yeah, just quickly, another added bonus I want to mention is that I found is that the Pearlie's Hugger is so light and compactable that you can just shove it in a large pocket. It is the one mid-layer that is always in my pack, no matter what I'm doing outdoors, whether I'm riding my motorcycle, hiking, canoeing, whatever. The Pearlie's Hugger is always there because I know in all but the coldest weather, I only need my Pearlies and a windbreaker, and I'm good for just about everything. You can buy one at pearliespossumsocks.com. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. pearliespossumsocks.com. You guys went through the Darien Gap, as we've mentioned a couple of times here. Now, you didn't ride your bikes through the Darien Gap, which was probably a smart thing to do, but you did cross the Darien Gap. And before I want to hear this story about how you crossed it and what it was like, but why would you want to cross it on foot? Like, why not just fly over and continue your adventure like most people do?
I mean, the obnoxious answer, I guess, is because it's there, right? I mean, and it's obnoxious and no less true for being, obnoxious, that like as travelers, I think a lot of people you've had on the show, have that similar kind of outlook that any place on the map that says like there be dragons here is kind of a place you want to go. It intrigues you, it interests you, and the Darien Gap is certainly one of those that is what is this place like? Yeah,
and we've flown our bikes before on our first trip, and Greg has done it. Putting his no, he didn't. You went on the boat.
Yeah, I ditched my very first trip. I ditched my my Yamaha 500 cruiser in Panama, and just kind of left it somewhere because it was done for. And then did one of these boats, like kind of pleasure cruise type deals that they do across to Cartagena.
Oh, I see.
So we had tried some of those other methods, and this is that thing that's always there that just kind of calls out to you. We had originally asked, sort of engaged and looked to do what is the ancestral route. Yeah. Which is essentially like the line on the surveyor's map where the Pan American would have cut through if
they had continued the road.
Possible.
Yeah, so it would have been like straight across, right through the center of the Darien, right, basically in the center of the map. You would see it.
And is there anything there? Like now, is that a trail or something?
Well, my understanding is that's the route that those the veterans, the military veterans, did in the fairly recent film. What was End of the Road? Where the road ends?
Where the road ends.
Right. So they did that a few years ago.
Yeah, we had them back on the show in 2022. I think it's called Mud, Sweat, and Tears. Not everyone makes it through. The guy's name was Wayne Mitchell. Mud, Sweat, and Tears. Not everyone makes it through. Wayne Mitchell. That's it. And 2022. So anybody wants to go back and listen to that.
Yeah,
right.
And we believe that that's the route that they took, which is basically through the jungle.
So, and if you look at the map, so the Andes is coming up all through South America. And then in Colombia, it kind of splits, I think, into like 3 fingers. And one of those fingers, the westernmost, kind of leads into that, that the Darien Gap area, and then becomes the mountains and volcanoes of Central America. So it happens to be that route that the Pan American was going to do, that those guys did. It is like a little like gap in the mountains. I'm not saying there's no terrain there. Of course there is. It's just the quote mountains have there's like a gap between them. Mm-hmm. And so if you're gonna, as far as we know, if there's any route that you can bring your bikes through brutally, it's going to be that one, because at least there's not mountains, and because the rivers at the right time of year, you can. You're loading the bike on a lancha, on a boat, and getting it as far up as you can. And then you have a brutal slog for several days. We really didn't have any desire to do
bringing
that.
our Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pros through the Darien.
You didn't want to subject them to that, or you just didn't want to go through the hassle of dragging them through the jungle?
Well, I mean, I think both. These bikes, are intended to last the next number of years around the world. We didn't really see it's one thing if it's hard riding, but just kind of dragging metal through the jungle doesn't appeal to,
Yeah.
There's other physical challenges that await us, Yeah,
it's not much of a ride challenge. It's more of I don't know, it's just a slog really of trying to, like you say, drag metal through the bush. through the jungle, which is even worse. I can understand why you wouldn't want to. But you brought up an interesting point there, saying that these bikes are meant to last from you. That's a traveler's sort of perspective rather than what I would call an adventure rider's perspective, like somebody who goes out for the weekend or a week or a couple of weeks or whatever, and they want to pound their bike hard through an area. It's about the challenge of riding through those areas. That's great because you can do that. You can afford to have a problem with your bike, but you guys can't because you need this bike on a daily basis, almost like transportation. Well, it is transportation, but I was thinking of going to work. You need it like that sort of transportation, something reliable, and it's got to be there every day for you.
Well, it's a really good point. And between ourselves, we often kind of maybe make that distinction between what you're exactly saying, adventure riding and motorcycle travel, where we're carrying our homes on there. We're carrying our homes and our mobile offices.
Mm-hmm. But what was the plan here as far as the Darien Gap goes?
So what was the plan? I mean, so like I said, the ancestral route cuts through there, and
that's what we wanted to do. Like I had researched it, and from some of the people that we spoke to, people who have some people who have walked it before, we had met somebody and gotten some information that the ancestral route would be the best route for us to do because it would be away from the migrant route. And the migrant route is what you see on the news as the more dangerous route of all of the migrants that are coming from the south up to north to get to the United States. And so the ancestral route didn't have that same migrant path. And that's what we wanted to do. So what we did at the beginning... Now,
let me just interject that, I mean, the ancestral route has the other challenge of kind of the more like narco and militant, more on the Colombian side.
It's less, patrolled because of those issues. It is more jungle. There's more possibility for danger and things to happen. And on the Colombian side, it's even a little bit more iffy than the Panamanian side. So there would be those things. And the other major issue with the ancestral route is that there's no immigration post at Palo de Letras. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Where you would cross that border. So you would basically be exiting Panama illegally and then entering Colombia illegally. And so we would have to figure out how we would get stamped out and stamped in.
So what did you decide to do?
So we... in order to do this, let's say, appropriately, which was one of our kind of sticking points.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get a giggle by kind of being those people who
run a border
or,
right.
do something questionable. I mean, that's not how we're trying to work our way through this. Although, I mean, I guess this is a digression. We did basically commit a crime getting into Nicaragua.
I know, that was bad.
Somehow mysteriously Jess's
my vehicle registration went missing. My
title.
Original registration. I didn't have my title. And so we got there and I didn't realize it until we got there and the guy was trying to review my documents.
We're already stamped out of Honduras and there's this like, at a certain age, it's absolutely terrible to even suggest that I'm at that age. But at a certain age, you'll start calling people younger than you kids. It makes my stomach roll. But this kid is wearing like the hat of the aduana there of the customs, and he's playing games on his phone. Mm-hmm. And we're going through our papers and we're in like a semi-panic of like, where did this document go? Like, this is no small deal. And he could just care less. And finally, we see that we had a photocopy of your title.
Yeah, a color copy.
Now, this color copy, which was the only thing good about it, was totally off center. It was one-sided. And of course, it had no watermark when the California title says, don't accept this without a watermark. But with like, look, I mean, I think I had said to Jess something like, look, I just used usted with this kid, meaning like I called him sir in, some formal, like I was very respectful to this kid. I said, we're at least going to try this.
So when you say try this, you're going to try and pass this off as an original.
Yeah.
Yes. And it worked, and then we gave it to the next person in the office and we just kind of kept chatting them.
Yeah, Greg was really good. It was two women at the counter. He was asking all the questions and about places to go.
Thing, right?
Yes.
Right.
And she was actually still learning, right?
She was brand new at the whole thing, so it was like anybody's guess if she even entered it correctly, let alone, was going to recognize the difference.
Well, the worst thing I think about that is you've got one that's a proper copy or one that's a proper document and then one that's a copy. You don't want those to get close together.
Right. I mean, they basically are identical in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyhow, so I mean that
was our only illegal,
illegal,
pretty minor crime.
Don't do this at home.
Yes,
because I mean the bike is yours. How did you lose the document anyway? How'd you lose your ownership?
I think so. When we're at the border, so we have to get our two bikes across, both of ourselves and Whimsy. So there's a lot of like documents that are floating around at these borders. So I think what probably happened at the Honduras border, which took forever, probably like 3 or 4 hours we were there. Yeah. I think that like Greg was handling all the paperwork and maybe
here's the issue, Jim. Okay,
Greg
I am responsible.
Yes.
I am responsible for the documents. And we were chatting just before you hit record about who on your team between you and Elizabeth is the sort of logistics and researcher and
right.
like capable brain, and who's the other person.
Right.
And our team is very similar, and it only because my Spanish is a bit better. Like I am designated as
the front man.
Yes.
Oh, so you're in a job that you're not capable of doing is really what it is.
I am totally. This is like the Peter principle or the Dilbert principle.
I prepare Gregory. I get him all of the documents. I put them in the proper piles, and then I send him on his way. And I think as he was probably chatting up the person who was at the window, he probably forgot to get my registration back.
Clearly.
Yeah, I know. Greg, I feel for you. I really do. I mean, if Elizabeth was here right now, she could tell you stories. There's no doubt about it. I mean, she would tell me to get something at the store and I will come back with something and she'll say, this isn't what I asked for. And I'll say, but you said this. And she said, that was the last word I said.
Yes.
But you said it. You said it.
I'm just
that's exactly it.
Out of your depth completely. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's
we wanted to do it in the proper way.
We wanted to do it the proper way. So you need to ask for permission from Senafront, which is Panama's the Panamanian Border Service, and they're like technically police, but they look like military. So it's one of these kind of militarized police groups. Group that makes it sound unofficial. They are the official, the Panamanian border police,
and they control all of the borders.
And so we put in a letter, which is kind of the default thing that you have to do. There's an email address, and you put in a proposal, right, saying this is who we are, this is what we're looking to do, and I guess some justification for why they should even bother with you.
Yeah. And so in our proposal, because we had spoken to a woman, Lucy, who had crossed from Colombia to Panama on foot. And she's actually trying to do the record of being the first woman to walk the length of the Americas, right? And so she walked it. And so we got in touch with her and she talked about how you need Senafront's permission. And she did it with a patrol.
Well, she, I think, tried to do it and got thrown out.
And then she realized the proper way to do it.
So, that kind of at least clued us into you need this permission, and it is possible to get permission.
Yep.
We took the added step, though, Jessica.
Okay, so I didn't hear back from them after I submitted the proposal. I called them, all of their numbers. Like we tried numerous ways to contact these people, and we're striking out. And so I thought, well, look, I've got an Instagram account. And these guys must have Instagram.
They are real people.
They're
at the
real
end of the
people,
day, right?
And the director general happened to be new. He's there for the past maybe year. Was it?
A few months.
Yeah, it was a newer guy. And so I thought, well, why don't I look him up and see if he happens to be on Instagram? And maybe, I've got the blue check mark on my Instagram, so maybe it'll come through. This is her
Instagram version of you can't just say Tiger 900. You have to say Tiger 900 Rally Pro.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah.
So I've got my little check mark there. And I thought, well, maybe my message will actually go to his inbox and he'll see it. So I sent him a message telling him what I'm doing and that we're trying to raise the money for Girl Up, and that this is one of our challenges that we really want to be able to do and really show what women
Inspire
can do.
young women, yeah.
And within how long? Maybe like 10 minutes. He responded on Instagram, and he was enthusiastic. He asked for more information.
He's a dog guy.
He's
got a big,
guy.
Was it a Rottweiler? I'm trying to remember.
No, he's got a pit bull, I think.
Big pit bull.
Yeah. We connected that way, and we told him what we were doing, and he asked for more information. And from there,
it was by no means easy at that point. I mean, it was still several, I want to say several weeks. It was maybe closer to a couple months.
Yeah.
Because we were still kind of at that point, I think, Nicaragua.
Yeah, we started this in Nicaragua.
Costa Rica. So we did this as we were still traveling, and we're kind of going back and forth, and there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of uncertainty. And ultimately, when we got to Panama City, we had planned to take a few weeks to prepare gear to actually, get into shape for this. And so we went to the
base.
Senafront base and basically sat down in a meeting with the head of operations and explained to him and his subordinate and, a couple other guys. And great. Excellent. We walked out of there I think this is happening. And then 2-3 more weeks of sort of back and forth, and it's not happening.
Oh, wow.
And the big holdup was, so there were two things. One is yes, Senafront needs to approve that you can access that area, but there's also the ministry that also needs to sign off on it to give you the proper permissions in order to cross. So we were waiting on that. And the second thing that we think held it up, which we figured it out, was the ancestral route. So they didn't feel comfortable having us go through the ancestral route because they couldn't guarantee our security on the Colombian side. So I think I mentioned that the Colombian side has a bit more drug activity and things going on and insecurity than the Panamanian side does on that ancestral route. And they just didn't feel comfortable passing us off, because what we had wanted was that they would pass us off to their basically their counterpart of the border patrol on the Colombian side that would continue us out.
Right.
So we eventually got a call back from another lieutenant commander who was doing his very best to talk us out of it, just take a boat, this isn't for tourists. And we tried to explain, look, we're not trying to do this as tourists. I mean, in this world, I guess, that we live in now of social media and stuff, there's maybe a finer line between tourism and adventures, and then people who are telling the story on social media. And so there's maybe an audience behind it or something like that. Anyway, try and explain that, right? To whatever extent, one believes it or not. But we ultimately were unconvinced that we should just plan to go a different way or take a flight. And so we went back in, met with the whole team again. And then they have their special forces who's in charge of the actual troops that do the patrols in that region. And that's when it sort of all just fell into place.
So they do patrol. You're saying patrol. Why would they patrol the jungle?
So they're patrolling all the area of the Darien Gap because they're just like the U.S. Border Patrol in that sense. They're patrolling their border. And they do have a lot of patrols going through the areas where the migrants are going through to help with any of the issues that the migrants are facing. They're there to help them through if there are any injuries or anything like that, if they need support in that sense. If there has been theft or if there's robberies and things like that, that's what they're there for. And we had talked about this at the beginning, that we didn't necessarily want to do it alone. We wanted the support of Senafront to be able to take us through with them. And so when we went back to the base this time, when things finally came together, we decided that the best way to do it would be with a patrol of Senafront police,
armed police,
and that would take us with them on their regular patrols. And their regular patrols happen to be on the migrant route. So we decided with them
Well, so they decided
that they will take us along, but we would have to go the migrant route.
Okay, so now you just mentioned the migrant route, and you talked little bit about it before. Just to talk a little bit more about that. What is that all about?
So this is a stretch. There's probably 2-3 routes, trails. I mean, trails is barely a word to use for this, but essentially paths by which something like 2,000 migrants are crossing every day. And they're coming essentially from the Colombian side, that coastal area there. They arrive at the towns right there, and then just kind of, I want to say disappear into the jungle, but through, you wouldn't call them coyotes because that's like on, the Mexico border, but it's like through some fixers, some organized groups.
More groups.
They're by boat, getting up the rivers there. They're getting into the jungle, and then they essentially usher them off, like follow this route. And they have some cans of tuna and the packs on their back and basically nothing more. And they're just streaming through this area. So you have incredibly virgin, pristine, just amazing jungle that has just been absolutely pillaged just along these narrow routes by a constant flow of humanity.
These are people who are traveling illegally. They're going to try to get somewhere without doing the proper channels, the proper paperwork.
Yes. So these are people, they're from all around the world. We met all nationalities. But what they do is they make their way to Colombia. Either they were flying into Ecuador at some point because Ecuador was allowing them tourist visas to cross up. Now things are changing and they're coming into Bolivia. They came into Colombia. From there, Acandí is the town on the side, on the coast there. That's where they actually start from. And then they come through, and their goal is to continue to just pass through all of these Central American countries in order to get to the United States. Everybody who we talk to, they all are trying to get to the United States.
So the word would be desperation for
Yes.
the people. They're in desperation. They're desperately trying to get through this. This is something, they're not doing this for the same reason you're doing it or anything close to it. This is to try and get a better life.
Absolutely that. I mean, this is
these are single men. These are women with children. These are families. These are small children walking. It's all families, all just people who are trying to have a better life.
We're going to take a quick break while I tell you about a couple things. Stay with us. Doesn't love motorcycle camping, but it can take some work to figure out what gear works best, what packs best, and what's more suited for motorcycle riding as opposed to backpacking or canoeing or something like that. Well, here's the solution. Moto Camp Nerd. Moto Camp Nerd is a brick and mortar store that specializes specifically in motorcycle camping gear. That's what they do. They are the motorcycle camping store. Located in Archdale, North Carolina, for those that want to walk in, but of course they're on the web as motocampnerd.com. They stock brand names like Nemo Equipment, Big Agnes, Sea to Summit. They say that their orders are processed and shipped within 24 hours, Monday through Friday, from the Archdale, North Carolina location. And for anyone that's undecided, you're looking for advice, you don't know exactly what's going to work best for your motorcycle camping trip, Ben and Mary Williams are the owners of Moto Camp Nerd. And they say they are happy to help you choose gear, sort out what you'll need from their extensive knowledge of products. In fact, they say that everything that they stock at Moto Camp Nerd has been thoughtfully picked for pack size and durability, specifically for motorcycle camping. Pack small, camp easy with Moto Camp Nerd. Their website again, motocampnerd.com. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. motocampnerd.com. Well, I was riding the other day in some fairly rough terrain when my front wheel caught a rock that was sort of hidden in the mud. The bike zigged, I zagged, but my feet stayed planted. I regained my balance and then continued through. It was my IMS Products foot pegs that helped keep my feet planted, connected to the bike in that moment of upset. It was those IMS products foot pegs that gave me that quarter or half second time to regain myself. IMS Products makes a full line of adventure motorcycle foot pegs ranging from their large ADV 1 and 2 on down in size to the core Enduro series. The pegs are all made of super tough 17.4 cast certified stainless steel, designed specifically for our style of riding with features like watershed design, which prevents mud and debris from jamming in the foot peg, which will loosen your grip between your foot and the peg. The staggered tooth design, which gives you that incredible connection between your boot and your peg without tearing the sole apart. And that's the connection that I just explained had saved me in that little rock incident. IMSproducts.com is the website. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. IMSproducts.com. So this route that you're about to take is a route that's taken by these migrants out of desperation. They're heading north. You guys are going south. So you're going to be going against the flow of traffic. But this isn't anything that's set up. This is not a path hacked out through the jungle with stairs and bridges. This is basically a path that's been hacked out by feet and hands through desperation. And that's what you're walking on.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is like the furthest thing from a trail that we think of, in terms of how many kilometers to the next viewpoint or rails or things. Now, I mean, there's been a number of kind of makeshift things that this series of, again, like 2,000 people a day, probably on the specific trail that we were on, it's 700, 800, 900 at least per day. And so, cloths, almost like Rapunzel putting her hair out so that the knight could climb up or whatever. I mean, there's bed sheets that have been tied together on steep parts.
There's some ropes on the really tough
vines.
Tough sections.
So no one's come with like sport climbing equipment and set up carabiners and anything. I mean, not even remotely.
But when you're talking about doing this, and you know it's a migrant route, at least you had an idea what it was about before you started to walk it. Does it still seem like a fun adventure? I mean, here you guys are going to walk this in the opposite direction of these people who are going through and all the other things that go along with this. Does it seem like it's going to be fun?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would say a fun adventure.
No,
in that.
It was a challenge.
It was a challenge. I mean, we see it very different, and maybe an element, going back to like the bikes. I mean, having the bigger bike is that more fun? I mean, when that engine is screaming and you're just tearing away, yeah, it's more fun. But it's also more of a challenge, right? Like you could be on a 200cc, a 300cc, and you could get through that mining road a lot easier, right? Like your heart rate probably wouldn't get up as much. But I mean, look, we're riding around the world with a 70-pound shepherd. We're running our business, a new business, trying to raise money for a nonprofit, and doing these challenges every 6 months. Like easy. It wasn't really the point. So no, it really wasn't intent. I don't think we naively or otherwise looked at it like, oh, this is going to be fun. I think we were, it's clear we were anxious. We were uncertain. But when a thing lights a fire in your belly, you pursue it, right? Or not.
To cross this, you guys are going to put packs on your backs. You're going to take your dog with you, and you're going to follow along with this regular patrol you mentioned, which I believe is 4 armed men that will be traveling with you. It's going to take how long to do it?
So it was 5, Jim. We
were rallying
yes,
pro, Jim.
we merited 5, not 4.
Okay, so yeah. But how long's the trip?
It was a 5-day trip, and the way it was supposed to work was that it was going to be a KISS movement.
Yeah.
Which is
sorry, I thought you were saying that it was 5 men with you, not
yes, 5 men.
5 men,
and we were doing we were going to do a KISS movement and a 5-day journey.
Right.
And a KISS movement, at least for us in the NGO world, means like you're at 2 remote locations and the 2 Land Cruisers or whatever meet in the middle, and essentially, schnout to schnout, they kiss, and then you transfer goods or people, and then the 2 go back to their original locations. So this troop was going to take us halfway, and then a troop from the other side was going to meet us and carry on, because that's their normal, again, we were like mojoing into their normal operations.
Yeah.
But they ultimately decided that they were going to just send this troop of 5 poor guys all the way through with us and not let them go all the way across.
Yeah.
So it was interesting in that regard as well, because they knew the route, 2.5 days in.
Yeah.
And then they were like, they were looking at, Jess had a map, it wasn't a map.
No, Wikilocs.
A Wikilocs map. So they're looking at that. They're calling base with the
their satellite phone.
So it was interesting because they were not by any means out of their depth, but this wasn't common ground for them.
Right. Now, what did you expect you're going to see on this trail?
Not what we ended up seeing, I don't think, because I sort of expected that we would see some migrants pass through. I didn't expect the volume that was there. I also didn't expect that we would be crossing this river so many times a day. So when we first got to the base where we started, they gave us a briefing. They talked about the health issues, about potential. Did they say malaria? No, they didn't say it.
Yeah, they talked about malaria. They talked about dengue and a couple other things.
But the water,
and we were kind of, again, tongue in cheek, but we were like, been there. Like lived in Africa. Like check.
But the key one was the water issue, because they wanted to be clear that you can't drink out of the river, even though it looks pristine. It's polluted now, but there are natural springs where you can take water from, and that's what you can drink. So the water was that. But then the other thing that the guy mentioned was he didn't like the boots that we were wearing. And so Greg had, what did you have? Those Vasque boots?
I had
hiking boots.
Hiking boots. You had Merrill hiking boots. These were that we've used for
volcanoes.
Several thousand meter ascents of these volcanoes.
Yeah, and they were in really good shape, but they looked at them and were like, I don't like your boots. Maybe you should get new boots. And this
was the day before we were leaving. Like, where the hell are we going to get new boots?
And how are we going to break them in? Yeah, we're in this very rural area. And so in the end, they said, no, it'll be fine. But the reason why they said that was because there are continual water crossings. So the migrant route follows the river that's there. And we were in the dry season, so it wasn't that high, but it still got up to waist deep in certain areas. And so you're crossing this river, I don't know, 2 dozen times a day.
2-3 dozen times a day. And you're just trudging through it back and forth.
Yeah. So it's not like any waterproof boot would save you. It's rubber boots wouldn't save you. Nothing would save you. You're going to get soaked. And they wanted us to have different boots because the boots that the soldiers wear have eyelets on the side that allow the water to drain out so that you're not trekking in soaking wet boots. And
you're not carrying buckets on your feet.
Yeah. Because the issue is you cross the river and then you have to hike up some boulders, and you're doing it with your shoes completely soaked. And that was tough for me because by the end of the first day, my boots had already broken. The backs of my Merrill boots, the rubber part, I guess because of all of the water, it just fell apart. And so now I'm looking around, and it was funny when we started, we were seeing people there were shoes that were left on the trail.
Shoes everywhere.
Shoes, one shoe, maybe only the left foot, and then further, maybe the right foot.
And Jess kept commenting, why do I only see one of these shoes? What does someone do? Lose one shoe and they can just walk in with another shoe?
Yeah.
And she's just I don't understand this, until all of a sudden her boot is falling apart, and it's you might need to swap that out.
Exactly. And so, so by the end of day one, I started to get really anxious. I wasn't sure my boots were going to hold. And I sort of had my own little wild moment. I was sitting there on the rock, and I was like, I just need to chuck these boots because they are not working for me. And I was like, Greg, maybe REI will send over some new boots, because these were from just REI.
Helicopter them in that clearing ahead.
But luckily they held up. They were completely destroyed, but they stayed together. But that was the really tough part, doing all of those water crossings.
Well, it's enormously grueling. I mean, I think we did a really good job, I would say, in the context of training for this every day, for a month or so.
Yeah.
But I don't know what prepares you for, you're carrying the 30 plus pound backpack, and these water crossings are just endless. And that kind of underlines a point to this quote route. We kept kind of turning to ourselves and saying, there's no way a bike gets through this.
No,
you can't ride these water crossings. There's no road then that like you're riding across to. And then once you get past the brutality of these water crossings, now you're making your way to this line of mountains, essentially, where that like fingerling of the Andes has passed through. And you're going up, 500-600 meters or so, of just like mud.
Like tree roots, like when the tree roots are dug out from the sides and you're like using those as handholds to get up. It was terrible.
You also, as you started out, you started hearing stories of people getting robbed, and anyone who has heard anything about this route that the people take through the Darien Gap has heard the same sort of thing. There's people there that are just cashing in on having people in a remote place that are probably also under the duress of being illegally there. So talk about that. How did that pan out?
So interestingly, maybe early on the second day, right? This guy comes over to our troop as we were taking a break. And, starts chatting, and he was now coming back, which is absurd, right? But he was going backwards because, so he was coming from Colombia. He had done this whole trek of 5 days, with a school child's backpack of stuff on his back. And at a given point, he had gotten robbed. There's basically like trolls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not under the bridge, but like they just come out from the forest, and they, a couple of them have machetes, a couple of them have pistols.
Yeah. And it's a choke point because like it's like these paths, like it's just basically a footpath in certain areas. And like it drops down the side down to the river, or you're right in the forest. So there's nowhere for them to go.
So they jump out and they extort you essentially like, okay, you have to pay a toll. And it's $100. And if you don't have $100, they rip through your stuff. They take whatever they want to take. And if they've decided that you've given them enough, or there's more people coming and they want to let you go, they let you go. So pretty much everybody that we were meeting who took a moment to stop and say hello and explain this either to us or to the troop was talking about this location, and as it started, it was like a day and a half ahead, then it was like 15 hours ahead, and you just kind of kept getting closer. So this guy had made it all the way across. He'd had everything stolen except his ID card.
His ID card is the only thing.
He gets to the Sena Front, like holding station.
Yeah, for the bike.
On, the Panama side there, essentially where we started from. He somehow uses a phone or a WhatsApp, right? I mean, you can pay anybody to do anything. So you can make a phone call, as long as you can pay for it. However it is, he got on WhatsApp and found out that his mother passed away, while he was doing this. So now he's decided to go back, which, I mean, of course, and yet once you've done this once, nobody ever wants to go do it again. So he asks if essentially can he
join our patrol?
At least, for this stretch, because of course he realizes he has to go back through that area. And so, essentially, I mean, we are just continually talking to people who are, who've passed that location, have been robbed.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're talking to the troop and saying, so what do we do in this situation? Like what happens? And what's clear is, number one, the chances that we, meaning the troop, not of course us, Whimsy will just bark at them and then lick them. But what do we do? Well, look, there's almost no chance that we're going to see them because they're in the bush, they're looking out, and there's no way that they're going to let themselves be seen when they see the military, garb and the M3s that these guys have and so forth. So don't count on seeing this. They just disappear, right? And then, if they get lucky, when these cases where they come across somebody and they can ascertain that this person is doing something like this, they'll call for support. They'll call for a troop. They'll detain the person. But it's interesting because as much as they have helicopter movement, I mean, this is not, you're not seeing helicopters flying.
No.
This is in 5 days, we didn't see one.
No.
So this isn't as much as it's patrolled. I mean, it's about the closest that I've ever seen it in Africa or anywhere else as like just total no man's land.
Yeah. Because we could walk for hours and not see somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so difficult to get into. Even if they call for backup, it's going to take days.
Yeah. And they showed us in the briefing sort of some images of a recent rescue that they did of a woman who had fallen and broken her leg and some other things. And, what all went into that.
And like when we were there, we definitely saw people who were injured. We saw amputees that were coming through, like one leg people who were trying to make their way through. We saw people a guy had a boot on, like he must have had surgery on his foot and he's still making it through in these water crossings. It was going to probably take him 2 weeks to make those 5 days of walking. Wow. And then we saw people who must have fallen,
themselves
broken their foot, and they had people who were holding them up, getting over these slick boulders and trying to get through this. It was heartbreaking to see that.
And ultimately, we did not see these robbers,
didn't see the
right?
Robbers. We passed right by supposedly where they were. Nothing. We didn't see anything.
Mm-hmm. But they must be making an awful lot of money. They're stopping everybody and demanding $100. I mean, they've got to be doing very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, they are they have a sustainable business model. It seems.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. What about the trail condition? Talk about the garbage.
Yeah, that was tough to see. And so, like Greg said, like the place is beautiful. Like, if we had found this place on our trip now and wanted to camp somewhere, we would definitely camp there. Like the water looked pristine. They had little fish in it, and they had like some waterfalls coming in. The forest, it was
jungle.
The jungle, it was lush. There were some areas that had beach. Like it was
just
beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous region. And then you start out again. We're going against the migrant flow, so we're at a spot where I guess by this point, people either are going to carry what they've got. They've gotten this far, or they don't have anything left to discard.
Yeah.
So as we started out, it's this amazing, pristine thing. And then you sort of hit a moment where you just start looking around and it is absolutely everywhere. I mean, it's
from like the wrappers to their food that they had, like the tuna cans are everywhere, to people who were dumping clothes because they didn't want to carry them anymore. The shoes I mentioned, bedding, like tents that had broken because they're like just these cheapy tents, and there were tents like laying in the water.
And then you see sort of every manner of oddity and sundry that just like what was happening here? How is this? Okay, so we were carrying a bit more than we should have. I mean, we as all motorcycle travelers then repent, we were hiking with more than, and we were thinking again, like our volcano hikes that are a lot of elevation. But this was just so much harder.
Yeah. Because
of these water crossings, and then because of the either mud or slick rocks that you're scrambling over. So we had our out and portable espresso maker, okay, because that's how we wanted to roll.
Love coffee.
I had my tin cup whiskey that is normally strapped to the outside of my bike as a go-to location, and I had like a shot for every night, as just to ease my barking dogs.
So yeah, we had extra.
So we
stuff.
had some. So I'm not, I'm the pot calling the kettle. Okay. Yeah. I'm not throwing stones here in a glass house or whatever, but like we came across a hairdryer that was discarded.
Wow.
We came across, I think if I recall, a sewing machine that was like, it's
really?
Like what in like just the most bizarre random things. Now, not a lot of it, of course, but in the multitude, like these things stand out because of all the normal stuff that you see in just multitude, and then you see some random things.
And I think the interesting thing is when you actually look at the migrants, they're not carrying anything. And I even commented on this to Greg. I'm like, where are all of their belongings? Like they are carrying like a school backpack, and that's it. They might have like a a sleeping mat sort of rolled up and attached to the outside. The men are carrying the tents. I noticed
a jug of water, usually
a jug of water, but that's it. And I'm like, where are all the rest of their things? But they just either don't have it, they lost it, they dropped it, or it was stolen. So
and then they do like our Colombian, compañero who basically picked up discarded bedding along the way.
Even our troop picked up a pair of shoes that they saw along the way because his shoe had...
By the way, a couple of them had boot failures.
Yes,
during
they did
this,
too.
Okay.
I don't understand though people discarding their shoes. I mean, they're just walking barefoot after that. I mean,
they must have to, or they found another pair of shoes that they could put on their feet, because really, like, once your shoe is half broken like that, that's like treacherous to go through the water like that, because it'll hold you down. And it gets really tough. I saw people crossing, sliding in the water and like falling down. And they talked about how like people say that they're like dead bodies in the Darien. And it normally happens during the rainy season where people are trying to cross this river, and it gets really high. People can't swim and they just get pulled down and sucked by the current. Jeez. And that's what happens. And there was one part where we were crossing and the current was really strong, and Whimsy was swimming across and she got swept up by it. And luckily Greg was able to grab the top of her harness and pull her back. But yeah, it gets really bad. And that was in the dry season.
Yeah.
You said the river is polluted. Is that why it's polluted?
The combination of every manner of discarded detritus, on the banks, in the river, and then dead bodies is a thing that over time. And then there's feces.
There's human poop everywhere. There are no bathrooms, so people are not covering their poop. They're just pooping wherever they can. And they, at night, the migrants sort of group together and they create like these tent cities where they basically just flatten an area by the river.
There'll be like then all of a sudden 100 people on a little patch of sand.
Yeah, and they just set up their tents close to each other so that they're less likely to be robbed. And obviously there's no bathrooms, and so they're just pooping wherever they can. And so there's
up the trail or down the trail, so that the next day when you cross that bit of trail, you cross it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's all feeding into this nice river.
Now, on that topic, there is this particular location. We've argued among ourselves whether it was one of the locations that they showed us during the briefing, as like, oh my God, one of these like, oh crap locations. Which in either way is absolutely and literally an oh crap location. So the direction they're coming from, we came from the bottom, and we're looking up this muddy mountainside slope, and there's some vines and some sheets and things to try and and you're just slip sliding as you try and scramble up it, right? They're coming from the other side, and they're looking down, and like you're just going to tumble down this thing. So again, the kind of dark humor like joke there is they look at this, they scramble their way down it, somehow get down, and you get to the bottom there where there's the clearing, and you've soiled yourself on the way. And so you just like toss your
there was like so much
deep into the bush.
There.
I mean, there was underwear, there was the smell of poop everywhere. And this was like the rest stop that we were just totally ground down.
Yeah.
We needed rest. And you needed rest before you were going to do this big ascent. So you're just like, you've like visited like a bath.
So where do you sit?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, you try and, a fallen tree trunk.
That's bizarre.
Yeah,
you're saying 2,000 people a day are taking this route. I mean, and that just keeps building up and building up. I assume the rainy season will give a lot of it a wash down, but wow, what a mess.
Yeah, it was a sad sight to see, and as we started where people were ending. So as we got further on, there was even more and more garbage as they started.
Yeah, because they got into this sort of like us and like, oh yeah, okay, I brought my out and portable espresso maker.
And I'll drop it there.
Chucking this deep into the bush,
like people would
which we did not.
No, but people would drop like like brand new sweaters and things like that we saw at the end, like they couldn't carry it anymore. And these are people who, like, there were a number of children, like small children, like the women were carrying them on their backs or on
infants,
the front. Babies that were coming through. And like I said, they were all nationalities, anything from, we had Pakistani, Chinese, we had Indian, we had from Cameroon, a lot from Venezuela,
Haiti.
and Haiti as well. So like just this huge like group of nationalities that were coming through.
Wow. To listen to it, for me, I can't imagine it being worth it, flying all the way there, going through the Darien Gap, making your way all the way up to the border. But what that does is point out exactly the position that I'm sitting in. To me, it seems unfathomable, but yet to others, it is the only pathway for them.
Yeah. And I asked Greg at the beginning, I said, I wondered if the migrants knew how tough the crossing was at the beginning, would they do it? And there was just this desperation that they needed to cross. And like Greg said, they were excited though. They wanted to talk. They wanted to tell us about their dogs that they had left behind, when they saw Whimsy and as we were coming through. And it was sort of like uplifting to see that they were excited about moving forward, even when it got really tough, like there were people, strangers who were supporting them, like they had these groups.
I mean, every sort of color and appearance sort of a thing, like a couple of presumably Haitian guys at one of the very ugly stretches where, you're scrambling across borders and a series of families, carrying their kids and holding the hands of the kids. And a couple of these guys stopped and like took the time to help the people down. And, and there was a lot of that, different strangers who found themselves as part of kind of the same caravan, now helping the person, in front or behind them. And they kind of do it in this wave where, we saw this, what was it? Day 4, I guess, night 3, we camped at the Centerfront base.
That's where we were supposed to do that kiss movement where the other troop was going to come and take us.
Oh, right.
So we stayed at their base that night.
So this base is just a carve out on a hillside in the jungle, wooden huts and so forth, and a generator. And a Wi-Fi signal.
Yes, which we didn't use.
But it's probably a couple dozen or so soldiers. And what happens is that people will it's a bit of a choke point where the river passes and connects with another stream. And so they'll sort of huddle there. They'll camp in a tent city on the other side, and then they'll pass through the next day. And the soldiers are there out front, either giving information or, record keeping is really sort of hard to say.
No, I think that they were putting them into groups. They were trying to sort of put them into groups to go together.
So, it's this situation where this is not at all legal. It's not at all permitted. And yet the reality is simply, we're not in a position to stop you. And if we did try to do that, what does that look like? So they're at least trying to create some order to the chaos and some degree of humanity to kind of what's happening. And so what happens is you get this at about 6 a.m, shortly after sunrise, you get this group that sets out, and then it elongates as people are going faster and slower. And that's when you kind of hit it wherever you started. And you're just like, for some period of hours, you're continuing, you're shoulder to shoulder and you're passing. It just does not end. And then there's some moment where there's nobody.
Yeah.
And you are absolutely alone for hours because, that group has passed. So you're kind of getting these two extremes of this location.
Clearly you made it through. We're talking now. What do you get from it? So you what do you take from it? What was your feeling when you were finished?
I think it ultimately underlines, I guess what I said in the beginning, this idea of something that you see that lights a fire in your gut, and so you say, I want to understand that. I want to see that. I mean, in our little corner of the world with Ruffly, where, we work with indigenous artisans and craftspeople. I mean, a part of our idea there always in how we make things, is that it provides opportunity to people who, many of whom otherwise or within their families
would want to cross.
Yeah. And Guatemala is obviously on the other side of the Darien. So they have Mexico and the border to contend with. But the idea was, opportunities here alleviate that pressure. So in our very small pinprick of a way in the world, we wanted to make things in a way that helps, address that issue. And so seeing this angle of this particular thing, I mean, our goal in the beginning, as we had said, was not to go through the migrant route. But when that became the option, it very quickly was incredibly interesting. And again, as a traveler, right? I mean, we were pretty clear when Jessica started us on this crazy thing, Jessica, that it wasn't intended to be a holiday. It was intended to, prove first and foremost that our gear and that the cockpit can take a dog around the world and look amazing doing it. And that, we were going to push ourselves and
this was
learn and grow.
The ultimate way to do it, both physically and mentally, because we definitely stopped and spoke with a lot of the migrants that were coming through and hearing their stories and what their plans were and what they were running from. So it was, when we got out of it, I felt accomplished. I think that we actually made it through. And it just sort of gave us a different, maybe a bigger perspective on the whole situation of the migrants. And now they've actually tried to close off that migrant route, just in the past few weeks.
Yeah. So the U.S. sent, I'm trying to remember, anyway, a party of diplomats to essentially sign a treaty with the new Panamanian president, where they've essentially said, this is no longer a route. Now, all of the Senafront guys wear a patch on their uniforms that says, no es una ruta. This is not a route, meaning the Darien.
It's a jungle.
This is not an appropriate way to pass through our country. But a patch is just a patch,
Oh, it's their campaign, but
yeah, it's the campaign. And so what we've heard initially is that, they are making efforts to shut this down. Again, it's hard to imagine how you just kind of build a wall against this many people in the jungle, which will probably just look like a diversion, right? New routes and new places. But it does seem that we were very fortuitous or fortunate in the timing of when we did it, because it is unlikely, very unlikely, that we would have gotten the permission at this point in time.
Yeah.
The bikes, though, you shipped them over the Darien Gap. You flew them over the Gap, including the 900 Pro.
Rally Pro.
Sorry,
Jim, get it right.
I knew I wasn't saying it right.
Yeah, if we get one message across in this conversation.
Well, another thing I might point out with this, I think, Greg, you do an awful lot of complaining about having all the junk on your bike. And now, is that to make the Rally Pro look good on video? Is that what it's all about?
When I've got things strapped to
at least he has them strapped on his and not on mine. Mine stays pristine.
Right. No, but is that about the video, or is that just because Jess doesn't like stuff on her bike?
Well, yeah. I mean, she wants to look good, and I'm clearly the gear mule. I mean,
I've got the movie star Whimsy on the back, so mine has to look good, right?
Yeah. But we shipped the bikes, and actually it was a funny story, because Jess, as our logistician and basically get her done person of the crew, she was looking, I think, at Horizons Unlimited and some of the resources that they provide or advertise as far as shipping. And then we had crossed into Panama, and immediately upon crossing into Panama, we threw ourselves north towards Boquete, which is kind of a touristy area. But what drew us is geisha coffee. Okay, so I mean, you hear geisha coffee, and how can you not go there to see what this is? It's supposed to be one of the most expensive coffees in the world, if not the most. I can tell you it's not the best.
All Greg had to say was, it tastes like a tea.
it was not
wasn't
the
like
gut
a strong
punch
coffee that you would expect, but there's something about all the different notes in this type of coffee that make it expensive. So
look at you, all the different notes.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So we went to taste the coffee, and then we started looking for wild camping as we were leaving town, and everything was fenced. It was a bit tricky. We come to a power station, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a grass field down there. You wait here. I just rode down to see if there's access. There wasn't, but while I was down there, a guy pulls up in a truck and starts talking to Jess. What are you doing? Right?
Yeah, yes. What was I doing? Was I looking for a hotel or camping or what? And I told him we were looking for a camping spot. And he goes, "Oh, follow me." He goes, "I'm a rider too. Just follow me. I have a place."
That's all it takes, guys. If you come across Jess, all you have to do to get her to follow me. I'm a rider. Okay. Just don't forget the "I'm a rider" part. And she'll follow you anywhere.
No, but he did. We did.
Yeah, nice
Greg
guy.
came back up. We followed him to he had a farm, like a horse farm.
He did like horse tours.
In a beautiful area.
Gorgeous.
And he allowed us to camp on his property. It turns out, yes, he is a rider. He's from the States as well.
Yeah, he kind of goes back and forth. And so in the kind of midst of conversation, before he deposited us there, he said, what are you doing like next? Where are you going? Right. That's the big question. And we said, well, we got to fly the bikes. So he set us up connected us with a guy who does this, e-cargo logistics. And I'm very clear about announcing that, not because as the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro, we had a deal or any, we got help, but this was just a really phenomenal service. So he's got a location at the airport. It cost us.
Is it $900?
It cost us like about $900 or something. It was like, not quite half of what you were finding elsewhere.
Yeah, I was finding maybe $1,500 or something.
And what he does in addition to that, so he says a lot of people, Europeans in particular, will start like at the bottom, and at the top. They'll start in Alaska. They'll come down and they'll reach that far with like the year sabbatical that they have. And Panama, embargoes your passport. They used to do it like as a stamp, and then they'd say, "Don't let this person leave." Now I think they do it in the system. So you can't just leave your bike there with somebody and come back in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So he receives your bike, he liberates it or liberates your passport, and now you can go. So then what a lot of these riders will do is just simply fly into Bogota after they've gone back to work for a year or whatever it is. And then he'll just have the bike meet you there. He just ships it to you and you've got it in Bogota and you continue going south.
So he's got like a whole bunch of bikes in Panama City there.
A whole stable.
Yeah, a whole stable of bikes of riders from all around the world that just leave them there until they're ready to continue again. And he ships all around too. So that was interesting as well.
So he takes your bike and then takes it off your passport under the guise of it's being shipped, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially as a customs broker agent, they have that designation where it's like, while it's in my possession, you haven't sold it, you haven't given any documents over. He's simply taken possession of it as a customs
officer,
broker.
Yeah, broker. He's
private. And now your passport is liberated to go. And this is exactly what I did on my first trip, where I said I left my Yamaha 500 behind. I deposited at a customs broker who said, if you don't come back in 3 months, it's mine. And I said, okay. And I never came back.
Oh, right. I see. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's the only way, unless I guess they just don't notice. I mean, it's in the system flagging your passport to say you're not supposed to leave. Mm-hmm. So that service is just, I guess,
great.
something to note. Yeah. Again, e-cargo logistics. Okay. No, we had a great experience, and it's so essential for anyone going through there.
Yeah.
E-cargo logistics. No, that's good. Certainly sounds like a lot of fun. I know we're going to talk again somewhere on your journey. I think that's inevitable. But before I let you guys go, just the charity that you're raising money for. So how do people support that?
So you can donate to Girl Up on our website at goruffly.com. When you go to the adventure tab, you're going to see all of our Go Ruffly information about our trip. And there's a donate now button. You can donate directly there. Like I said, 100% of it goes right to Girl Up. If you're in the US, it's tax deductible. And yeah, we would appreciate any support you guys can give for helping us reach our $100,000 goal.
And of course, the other thing is you guys make an amazing dog carrier. So if you have a dog, you want to take it for a ride, as well as gear for the dog. I mean, collars and harnesses and
leashes,
things like
beds,
that.
bandanas, you name it.
That's right. You got a.
Yes.
I guess you've got a bunch of bedrolls now. I know we have one of your bedrolls, but I think you mentioned something about on one of your videos about something being waterproof on the bottom.
Oh yeah, the bottom of the tender paw trekker is waterproof, so that you can keep it out at the campsite and then roll it up, and then you put it on your bike and you're good to go.
Right. So dog lovers are going to have to go to your website and check it out, which is ruffly.com, I believe.
GoRuffly.com.
GoRuffly.com. Very good. Jess, Greg, thank you so much. I really had fun talking with you, and we'll talk again.
Thank you
Sounds
so
great.
much.
Thank
Jim.
you.
That was Jess and Greg Stone of Go Ruffly. Now, they documented their entire crossing and produced a great video series on their YouTube channel, which is well worth watching. You'll see the Darien migration route. You'll probably see things that you've never seen before. It can even give you a better understanding of the people who attempted the route, but certainly what they had to go through, and see what the dog had to go through. Well, poor Whimsy had to go through to get through along this trail. And the whole thing is incredibly interesting. And you'll also see why taking a motorcycle across the Darien would be so incredibly difficult. They are found as Go Ruffly, of course, on all their social media. We've got some great photos from their Darien adventure and a link to their Darien video series on YouTube, all in the show notes for this episode on our website, adventureriderradio.com.
Hey, I just want to remind you that this episode has been brought to you by Green Chili Adventure Gear, greenchiliadv.com, Motobreeze Chain Oiler at motobreeze.com, and Best Rest Products at cyclepump.com. And we'd really appreciate it if anytime you're dealing with these companies, anytime email or otherwise, let them know you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio.
Well, that about wraps up another episode of Adventure Rider Radio, and we sure hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we did making it. Special thanks to our producer, Elizabeth Martin, and you. Thank you very much for being a part of this by listening to the show. Now, this show is built on a model of advertising and listener support. We need your support. Drop by our website, adventureriderradio.com, click on the support button. Anything $10 or more gets you an Adventure Rider Radio sticker. Anything $50 or more gets you a shout out on our Raw show, but we would really appreciate it if you'd look at the Patreon option. That way you can be there every month for us. And I mean, you can pick any amount, but drop by and have a look. Anyway, time to get out there and ride your bike if you can. Oh, wait, just before I go here, we've just brought out another episode of Raw. It comes out every month on the 21st of every month. That's the other show that we do called Adventure Rider Radio Raw. It's roundtable talks about motorcycle travel and other things. And it's a separate feed. Find that everywhere you find podcasts. All the information on that is at our website, adventureriderradio.com. Now get out there and ride your bike if you can. My name is Jim Martin. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next week.
Hi, everybody. This is ADV woman Pat Jakes, and you're listening to Adventure Rider Radio.